All right, guys. Sorry I'm a couple minutes late. Somebody didn't realize her phone was dead. So, sorry for being a couple minutes late. I think we've got everything ready. So, we'll give everybody a couple seconds to get on. Sorry. Didn't realize my phone was dead. Maybe if a little girl wouldn't have played so much on it this afternoon, it probably would have been okay. But I had somebody staying on it all afternoon. Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started since I've got a few people who have jumped on. So I do want to just open tonight with a little bit of a testimony. I'm very excited that I had a doctor's appointment today for my ears. Some of you may have known that I've been struggling with this ear infection for like 6 or 7 weeks. And it's been a long time and several rounds of antibiotics, several rounds of steroids. I was beginning to wonder if I was just going to just have this for the rest of my life and it was gonna mess up all kinds of stuff. So Sunday night, I was laying in bed trying to go to sleep and I felt my ear pop. And at that point, I didn't know if it had ruptured. I was just waiting for blood to start pouring out. But it popped. It didn't hurt anymore all day Monday, part of the day Tuesday. I felt it draining, and so I was very thankful. I went to the doctor today. They said my ear's perfect, no fluid, no infection, and I had a hearing test that in the past has shown slight hearing loss in the right ear, but today my hearing was above average. So thankfully, no hearing loss. My ear is fine. My infection's gone, and I'm very thankful. So just wanted to share that testimony with you. I'm excited about that. I was really, really scared I was going to have a procedure done, but thankfully, no procedure. I'm good. I'm good. So we'll go ahead and get into our lesson tonight. It is going to be short and sweet tonight because this is kind of like an introduction to the next 3 weeks. It's kind of like a triple layer cake. I'm doing the icing on the top. This is just the little thin layer, and then we're gonna have 3 weeks of y'all, I can't do anything with my family around. They are loud and they're all laughing. So this is gonna be our introduction to the next 3 weeks of lessons. We'll go in more in depth to those. So what we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks is going to be order by God. God created order. God has always had order. The Bible even says to let everything be done in order. So God has an order for everything. God has an order for the world. For our solar system, he knew that the sun needed to be in the middle and that the only planet that temperature-wise could handle humans was Earth, and that there were other planets that would rotate around. He knew that we only needed one moon and that it would control gravity. He has a plan for ecosystems and animals and the way that they live together in harmony. From the Lion King, he has an order, of the circle of life. I mean, he knows that, this eats that, eats that, eats that, eats that, just to keep things going. God had an order of the way that he would redeem the world, of how he would come in flesh and save us. And there's power to God's order. If you read Ecclesiastes chapter 3, it says that God has an order for everything, that there's a time for everything, there's a place for everything, there's a way for everything. Even the seasons of our lives, there is order to that. There is a reason behind that. It's not just happenstance. It's not just the way that the universe declares it. It is the way God made it, and this is the way that it is. So, and then like we talked about last week when we talked about submission, there is an order that God set for our families. That is God and man and woman and children and dogs. And no, I'm just kidding. So God has order to everything. And so just like God has order to our natural world, God has order to our spiritual world, God has an order to holiness. And so there is steps that we have to take in order to achieve inward holiness and outward holiness. And those steps are attitude, principles, and standards. Okay? And there is an order to these steps, and there is a reason that attitude is first. And so let's talk about these steps, what they are, what do they mean. We're going to go more in depth to these 3 steps over the next 3 weeks. Tonight's just an overview. Tonight is an introduction. If you're in college, tonight is your syllabus. After this, we'll get more into it. So attitude is a mental position or feeling with regard to a fact or state, or a position of something in relation to something else. Attitude involves an understanding that holiness is a part of God and a part of himself that he wants to give to us. Holiness is not just standards. Holiness is not just, living a holy life. Holiness is a part of God that he wants to share with us. Only when we have that understanding that holiness is a part of God, we can fulfill the second half of the definition, that is, attitude relates to something else. When our minds take on an attitude of holiness, then we can relate that attitude to our daily lives and actually produce a holy lifestyle. Because that's what we strive for. We're striving for holiness. We're striving for perfection because God is perfect and he wants us to be like him. So the first step is attitude. The second step is principles. A principle is a fundamental law, doctrine, or assumption. It is a rule or a code of conduct of a devotion to that contact, or a primary source or an active source. A principle involves our knowledge and reason for following a code of conduct. It's the underlying law or doctrine that we understand and then obey according to our understanding. Once we understand the doctrine or the law, then we can apply it to the second part of the definition of principle to our lives. When we have the knowledge, then it becomes the primary source that activates our lifestyle. So, first is attitude, second is principles. Third is standards. A standard is something set up as a rule for measuring or as a model to be followed. Standard measuring cups. In America, if you have a measuring cup that's a cup, it's a cup. It's not a half a cup, it's a cup. Every measuring cup that says it's 1 cup is 1 cup. That's a standard. Or if you have a standard of, that's the only thing really I can think of is like a measuring standard. It is standard. It is the same across the board. It's the same at your house. A cup of sugar at your house is the exact same as a cup of sugar at my house. Now, I don't mean a heaping cup of sugar or like, well, that's almost a cup, but I don't like it too sweet. A cup is a cup is a cup. That is a standard. A standard involves a person's body acting upon the knowledge of a principle, which is fueled by his or her mind having the right attitude concerning that fact. So let me say that again because that confused me and I had to read it over and over and over again. A standard involves a person's body, or flesh, acting upon the knowledge of a principle, which we said was a code of conduct, that is fueled by our mind having the right attitude about it. Okay? So these all work together. When you have the right attitude, then you're able then to follow the right principles and then to step into the right standards. So we're going to talk about those 3 over the next 3 weeks. We're going to delve into them deeper. We are going to really hash it out. What is a good attitude? What is a bad attitude? What's the right attitude versus the wrong attitude? What are principles? What are principles that we live by? What are standards that we live by? Why do we live by standards? Those are things that we're going to talk about over the next 3 weeks. I told my husband that if I went into attitudes tonight, it was going to be too long of a lesson to do the introduction and the attitude. So we're going to save the attitude for next week. And so tonight we just covered that. So I'm done. So over the next 3 weeks, we're going to cover attitude, principles, and standards. Those are the things that we're going to cover in our steps to holiness. So we talked about, God has an order to everything. And so this is the order. We're going to start with our attitude next week. Then we'll go into others. After that, then we'll be done with this first book. And there's 3 books in the series. So we'll be done with the first book after that. And then we'll move on to inward holiness. So steps to holiness, attitude, principles, standards. Thank you for joining with me tonight. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Rest, enjoy your weekend. We'll see you Sunday morning, ready for worship, ready for the Word of God. Thank you for joining with us tonight. I pray y'all have a blessed week. And stop streaming, and then stop